Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I'm Jim Cowie from everywhere, all the time. So the latency is not so important, but you want to make sure that every single machine on the planet always has a valid route to something that is going to serve the root zone. So the way this worked out historically, of course, is, there have been root servers since DNS was invented in the 80s. I don't think there was one outside the United States until 1991. Paul Vixie and Bill Manning systematized this in 1995 to create these A through M name server, root servers.net zones. And I think it was 1997 that RIPE NCC started operating Kroot, the K community, first out of links and then later spreading to many, many instances. So you can see from the map, today there are 140 different instances of Kroot. They are literally everywhere. This is DNS without borders. If you go back to the original, the RFC for root server operations, which I think is 7720, you see that every instance of this system must answer everybody who comes asking. So it doesn't matter, as long as it is a valid IP address, you have to provide the answers. You can't censor, you can't deny service. This is the duty of a root server operator. And so it's a very interesting community. It is simultaneously a very global community, but also a very local community. And so if you, every host on Earth should have a route to one of these two blocks, one in v4 and one in v6. RIPE has been running Kroot on v6 since 2008, so almost 20 years. And if you do, you'll be able to connect to an instance. Now we do want them to be local, right? Because having a local instance increases the probability, or rather reduces the probability that you will not be able to reach an instance of Kroot effectively to zero, right? You want one on net with you, ideally, if not on net in your neighbors or so on. The way this works is pure Anycast. It's just BGP. The instance you end up talking to will be the one that comes out of shortest AS path, whatever that happens to be. And so this actually gives us some very interesting insight into how people peer together, because some of these Anycast routes for Kroot can travel a long way. So here's a quick map of, just to show you that there are a large number of instances in the region. If we look at them specifically, there are 3 here in Kazakhstan, the biggest, I think, in Pavlodar, but then also in Semey and newly in Astana. There are 2 instances in Bishkek. There is one in Tashkent. There is one in Dushanbe. There is not yet one in Turkmenistan, but this is a pretty good set. And so this provides opportunities for the national communities to serve their own customers, but also to offer assistance as necessary, should it become necessary. So it seemed reasonable, right? This is a system that we can look at from the outside if we use Atlas and so forth to probe and figure out what a probe thinks is the best Kroot instance. We can also use, in this case, the Kroot logs themselves to figure out who's asking for service, what resolvers are coming to the instances. So what you see now, this is a much cleaner picture than it would have been even a year or 2 ago. What you see now is a very good result. You basically see that the pool of resolvers making queries on the left is being directed to an instance on the right that's pretty much in the same country. I mean, intuitively, that's a good thing. It's not a necessary thing, but it does show good locality. So we see that Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Iran all handle at least 98% of the local resolver traffic at the instances in those countries. Uzbekistan is a little bit of a special case. They have a slightly different strategy, which we will dig into here. They keep about 3/4 of query traffic local. It ends up on the Uzbek instance. About 1/4 of it is coming here to Kazakhstan. So Turkmenistan, I mentioned, doesn't have an instance yet. And so they export their query traffic A lot of it comes here. A lot of it also goes to Germany. So we can dig in a little bit. If we take a look at the resolver population here in Kazakhstan, so this would be every DNS resolver that makes a query of a K-root instance here in the country. You see this sort of three-way load balance, if you will, over the three local instances. Pavlodar gets about 86% of the queries, and then Semey, and then Astana. And it's a similar breakdown if you look at the slightly different picture of resolver IPs, right? Every resolver in the country is picking their own best path. The instance they end up talking to, will be slightly different depending on their transit and peering arrangements, but it's about the same breakdown. Pavlodar serves about 56% of the total set of resolvers that need this service, and fewer in Semey and fewer in Astana, perhaps because it's the newest instance. Uzbekistan, remember I called out as a special case because Uzbekistan kind of load balances between the local instance and the Kazakh instance. And it does so in an interesting way. So in terms of query volume, how many queries from Uzbekistan actually sync in Uzbekistan? It's about 3/4, as we said. And then a little bit, about a quarter in Pavlodar and a little bit in Armenia. If you look at it in terms of resolver IPs, it's inverted, which is interesting because it shows you that there's a large population of providers who have slightly different pictures about what the best route might be. And so you can imagine there is probably a dominant provider generating most of the query traffic to Uzbekistan. And then smaller providers are making different choices. So that's kind of neat. So we wanted to dig into it. So here's what's going on in this sort of a flow graph. The broadest ribbon here is if you are a customer of 8193, Uzbekistan Telecom, you're clearly just going to K-root through the local instance. If you are any of the people on the left, this diverse pool of Uzbek providers who connects through 28910, Uzbek Telecom's other AS, you may get to a different instance. You will often be directed to Armenia or here to Kazakh Telecom. So this is not bad. This is resilience in action. This is potential backup paths. So we can dig in just a little more in the short time we have. Take a look at the latencies. Now, latencies don't really matter for root service. And I'll say maybe that's controversial. But remember, root service is mostly about availability. We never, ever want the last instance of a root server to go away. That's why we have 13 groups, and inside each group, we have sometimes hundreds of instances. Availability is key. Latency is nice. So if we look, latencies are still pretty good, right? Here we take a look over the entire year to date. This is 2025 from left to right. And round trip time to the K-root instance is on the y-axis. And so you can see that starting from the bottom, if you're in Kazakhstan and you're mapped to Astana, under 10 milliseconds. If you need to go to Pavlodar or Semey, maybe up to 20 milliseconds. Very solid. Earlier in the year, some population of people might have been hitting the Bishkek instance in Kyrgyzstan. Cool, about 30 milliseconds, but nothing really high. So this is good locality. If we go to Uzbekistan, it's a little bit more of a complex picture, right? If we start from the bottom, Tashkent does this in 10 milliseconds. Perfect. Pavlodar, about 30 milliseconds. And then up from there. So international instances that are available to Uzbek users like Estonia, Armenia, 70, 80 milliseconds. In the last couple months, we see Pavlodar, Kazakhstan, being slightly higher latency, 120 to 160. It's kind of interesting, right? Why would that be? So as I said, sometimes you can look from the outside. If we get lucky, we have a probe, an Atlas probe that can do a trace. We'll see what this is. And in this case, we do have an Atlas probe inside one of the networks that experienced this slightly higher latency. And you can see the result. This traffic between Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan is being mediated by Russian transit or Russian peering, I suppose. So this is actually a trace from Uzbekistan through to Kazakhstan to get to the K route, and it goes through St. Petersburg. Right? These things happen. As I say, the most important part is that there's connectivity. I found this interesting, right? If you go in and look at who is using these Central Asia's K-root instances, remember, when you provide a K-root instance, you are becoming a member of a global community and you're offering service to potentially anybody on Earth. That's the contract. So we looked over 3 days and digested full logs for 3 days. This is around the end of July, the beginning of August. Russia is sending millions of queries a day to Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is actually the #1 destination for K-route traffic from Russia, which is cool. China, the same. #2 is Kazakhstan. Pakistan is sending millions of queries a day to Pavlodar, to right here. And in fact, there's a long tail of at least 30 different countries whose resolvers are coming to Kazakhstan for service, which is really cool. It kind of signifies that 91, 98 must have some very rich peering going on so that those Anycast routes are making it out to people. I put up a QR code here. This is a tool that RIPE runs. You can take a look at the catchment area of any instance of K-root. And you can see that this is just on a recent day, the set of Atlas probes that thought Pavlodar was a pretty good place to go for K-root. This is their shortest path. It's all the way out to the Philippines. It's all the way out to Kamchatka. It's a beautiful footprint. So take a look. You can play with this. It's a very nice interface. So I'm going to quit because I think that's the time we have. But this is the core message, is participating in this K-root network makes Central Asia very much part of a global community. It's nice that people send local traffic from local resolvers to local instances. Presumably those are going to be more resilient routes than the alternative. But it's good to see that there are backups. It's good to see that your neighbors also have instances that you can use. So this is sort of classic old internet. The more you build, the better it gets. So thank you very much. I appreciate your attention.